Okay, so we are studying Lesson 8 in our quarterly called Family Seasons. The title of this week's lesson is The Season of Parenting. So how many parents do we have here in class this morning? Tons. And I know we've got some grandparents here too, because I know we've got some visitors here visiting grandbabies. So I know that there's really nothing you parents love more than getting advice and guidance from somebody who's not a parent, right? Isn't that just the best? Well, I'm not one, so please know that I am super sensitive to that fact, and I'm going to be deferring frequently to all you parents out there for the real scoop, okay? So in Bible times and historically, babies and children have been kind of a big thing. They were a big deal. They were associated with wealth and power, royalty, aristocracy, and they even were associated with being blessed or cursed by God. Many of these biblical women pled, they poured out their hearts to God, begging for a child. You remember some of them, right? You remember Hannah weeping at the temple, or Rachel thinking that death was a preferred alternative to barrenness. We talked a little bit about some of these miracle birth stories last week and about how the stories chosen to be recorded in the Bible. You ever wondered how that happened? We're talking about a gazillion potential historical accounts, but there are only a certain number chosen to be recorded in the Bible, and how those stories not only serve as a historical record, but they can also serve to reveal a larger reality or object lessons. There are 7 of these examples. Interesting that there are 7. We know the meaning of that number. 7 examples of barren women who were healed and gave birth, and each one of those children are all types of Christ. Again, we talked about this last week. So I had already prepared some of my lesson before. Tim spoke on unity in the family last week. He stole some of my stuff, but he also gave me some additional material. So some of this might be a review. So these are real people, real historical accounts, but their stories serve as object lessons pointing to Christ. So we had Sarah, who prayed for 90, 100 years. Let that sink in. For a child, finally was blessed with Isaac, who was then brought up to Mount Moriah and asked to be sacrificed, symbolic of Christ, who would be sacrificed. Then we have Rebekah, who was barren, prayed and prayed. She had Jacob, who became Israel, the father of the nation built upon 12 sons. And of course, Jesus then became the cornerstone of the church, built upon 12 apostles. We had Rachel, who prayed and prayed and eventually had Joseph, who was sold into slavery, then became ruler to free the people. Jesus went into the slavery of sin in order to free us from it. We had Manoah's wife, prayed, and she was blessed with Samson. He was given strength to deliver Israel from bondage of oppressors and then rule over them. And Jesus, of course, has the strength to deliver us from sin and eventually rule the universe. Hannah, as we talked about, prayed on the steps of the temple. She was given Samuel, who became the high priest. Jesus is our high priest. We had the Shunammite woman. The child died, was resurrected by Elijah in 3 days. And of course, Jesus died, rose again in 3 days. And then Elizabeth, Jesus' cousin, John the Baptist, who was the greatest of the prophets. And Jesus, of course, was the greatest of all the prophets. So in each one of these situations, did God miraculously get these barren women pregnant? Was that the miracle?
No.
No. The miracle he performed was one of physical healing, just like healing blindness, healing deafness, which he did while he was on this earth. But in these cases, God healed or restored their reproductive abilities. He healed whatever was inhibiting their fertility. The women still had natural relations with their husbands, and that got them pregnant. God did not get them pregnant. But Mary, of course, was different.
I didn't know where you were going with that.
It wasn't a rhetorical question.
No, exactly.
Simple yes or no.
Mary was different. In her case, no miracle was performed to heal a physical malady that prevented her from conceiving. In her case, God did instill a pregnancy in her, a true miracle birth. Now think about this. Do you find it odd that God chose Abraham to be the family through whom the Messiah would come, and the first 3 generations, Sarah, Rebecca, and Rachel, are all barren and all require a miracle healing in order to conceive? What are the odds of that? Is that random chance?
They were related. Let's put one thing in there.
Absolutely.
They were cousins. They
Yes.
were half siblings, and so there could be some issue related to that medically.
No doubt. And we're going to talk about that. There is some genetic and intergenerational issues. So that's definitely a possibility. But what else is going on in this whole play? This scene that's being acted out, this theater and spectacle to angels and men. Is there a great controversy going on? And remember how we've talked about, if you think about it, the flood, Satan did not really have to target his attacks. He was attacking the entire world to the point where he got it down to only one person, one heart still left open through whom the avenue of the Messiah could come. But when Jacob was chosen and Israel was highlighted as the line, the lineage through whom the Messiah could come, he could target his attacks. He didn't have to spread them, and I'm not saying that he left everybody else alone, don't get me wrong, but his goal was to keep the avenue for the Messiah closed. And I'm sure he felt like if tampering with reproductive abilities could get that done. I don't know. We don't have any inspired word that that's what happened, but it does make you wonder. Yes, Dr. Moses.
The wives, the mothers that you're describing, each one was chosen in a near miraculous way.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just sporadic or random that these women were chosen.
Exactly.
How was Sarah chosen in a miraculous way? I mean, I'll agree with you, the last two. But as Abraham's wife, I'm not sure I'm following.
I see her as being a half-sister, and then, so why was she chosen? She was one of the very few out of the probably wide selection in whatever that place was, that truly loved God.
Right.
You know?
And I think I understand what you're saying, and it was the mothers that were chosen, because in many of these situations there were other options. Many of these men had multiple wives. You know what I mean? So. And
Sarah's handmaid.
Correct.
Well, and Abraham obviously was fertile. I mean, he had multiple children after Sarah died.
Right.
It was 70?
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
Yes. 70 sons or 70 children?
I don't remember
He had a boatload of kids after Sarah passed away.
Either way, pretty impressive. So, reiterating, biblically and historically, babies and children, super important. So what about now? What do you think in this country? Do you think it's the same?
Sadly, no.
Seems like not nearly as much. So I delved into some statistics, looked at a 2018 study from the CDC, And it shows that the birth rate fell for nearly every group of women of reproductive age in the United States in 2017, reflecting a sharp drop that saw the fewest newborns since 1987. The general fertility rate sank to a record low of 60.2 births per 1,000 women of childbearing age. And that's a 3% drop from 2016, the year before.
It's not just the U.S., it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
UK, Western Europe,
Yep.
Japan, you name it. Birth rates are plummeting.